They laughed at her, mocked her, and called her names. But when she picked up the phone and uttered just a few words, their billion-dollar empire began to crumble before their eyes. Stay with us till the very end of this story, because what happened that night at the gala will shock you, move you, and make you believe in miracles. And if you love stories of justice, power, and the human spirit, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now, because stories like this are just the beginning. That night, the ballroom gleamed with chandeliers brighter than 1,000 suns, crystal glasses clinking like fragile promises, laughter floating like perfume through the marbled air. But behind the glamour there was venom, arrogance, and cruelty hiding beneath tuxedos and silk gowns, and at the center of it all stood Amara, a woman whose very presence radiated grace, intelligence, and strength, yet whose skin color made her the subject of ridicule to a family who thought their wealth gave them the right to mock others. She entered the gala in her pristine white gown, her hair sleek, her eyes sharp with the determination of someone who had built her empire brick by brick, deal by deal, rising from nothing but the dust of forgotten neighborhoods, while across the hall the Montclair family billionaires, smug and entitled, pillars of old money, whispered insults and laughed, pretending she was a servant, daring to treat her like she was less than human, even as she held in her hand the key to a $5 billion merger that could either skyrocket their empire or destroy it overnight. But they didn't know, or perhaps they didn't care. So when Victoria Montclair, dripping in red silk like a queen of cruelty, raised her glass and pointed at Amara saying, "Serve us drinks, ape," the laughter of her brothers and husband erupted like a cruel orchestra, and for a moment the ballroom froze, some faces gasping, some averting eyes, yet no one brave enough to intervene, and Amara felt her chest burn with the humiliation of every insult she had ever endured. But she stood tall, her hand steady as she pulled her phone from her clutch, her voice trembling not with weakness but with the force of destiny as she said into the receiver, "Cancel the $5 billion deal, effective immediately," and the color drained from the Montclair's faces faster than champagne spilling on marble, their smirks dissolving into panic, whispers spreading like fire through the guests. The merger, the one that was supposed to secure their legacy, was gone. And it was gone because of their arrogance, because they had mocked the very woman who had the power to decide their fate. But this story didn't end with vengeance alone, for as Amara turned to leave the hall, her heels clicking like gunshots on marble, memories flooded her mind. Memories of her childhood when she lived in a cramped apartment with peeling paint and leaking ceilings, when her mother worked double shifts as a nurse just to put food on the table, when her father's voice echoed with hope before illness stole him away too soon, when kids at school sneered at her hand-me-downs, when every door she knocked on slammed in her face because she was a black woman daring to dream of business empires, and every rejection became her fuel, every insult her ladder, every tear her fire, until she clawed her way into boardrooms where she was the only woman, the only person of color, the only one who refused to break. And she learned to turn pain into strategy, to wield intelligence sharper than any blade, to smile at those who underestimated her while she outsmarted them behind the scenes. And it was that same strength that gave her the courage now to not just cancel the Montclair's deal, but to buy out their competitors, forging alliances that would make her company untouchable, her empire vast, her influence unstoppable. Still, beneath her steel exterior, Amara carried her heart like a secret, the heart of a daughter who remembered her mother's words, "Never let them tell you who you are. You decide who you are." And in that moment, walking out of the ballroom, she realized that this was not revenge. It was justice, not just for herself, but for every girl who had been told she wasn't enough, for every person who had been mocked for their skin, their roots, their dreams, for every soul who had been made to feel invisible in the face of wealth and privilege. And as the Montclairs scrambled, making desperate calls, their empire shaking, investors fleeing, partners turning their backs, Amara didn't gloat, she didn't look back with malice. She only walked forward, knowing the greatest victory was not destroying them, but proving that dignity could never be bought, that respect could never be demanded, only earned, and she had earned it with her blood, sweat, and tears. But just as she reached the exit, an old man stopped her. Frail, yet with eyes burning with something more than curiosity, he was a retired judge who had once dismissed her father's plea for fair treatment at a hospital when insurance failed them, and he whispered, "Forgive us, child, we knew not what we crushed." And for the first time that night, Amara felt tears sting her eyes, not from pain, but from the strange miracle of life's symmetry. For here was a man who once denied her family justice, now seeking mercy from her in a gilded hall, and she nodded silently, not in forgiveness of him, but in acknowledgement of the truth. Power changes hands, but humanity must remain. The next morning, headlines exploded. Montclair's $5 billion deal collapses overnight. Black woman CEO reshapes Wall Street. Humiliation at Gala Sparks business earthquake. And around the world, young women clipped her story. Schools taught her rise. Newspapers debated her choices, some calling her ruthless, others calling her a hero. But to those who had ever suffered mockery, she was a miracle. Living proof that the story doesn't end with humiliation but can twist into triumph. Yet the Montclair weren't finished, for desperation drives the proudest to madness. They tried smear campaigns, they dug into her past, but every shadow they tried to cast only revealed more light. For Amara's integrity was unshakable, her record spotless, her alliances loyal, and soon the Montclair's empire crumbled like sandcastles against the tide, their wealth shrinking, their name fading, while Amara's influence only grew, not because she destroyed them, but because she built something larger than any single deal. She built belief in herself, in others, in the idea that dignity, when defended, can shift the world, and in the quiet of her penthouse office, overlooking the city lights that once seemed unreachable, she whispered to herself, "For you, Mama, for you, Papa, for all of us." And with that she smiled, a smile not of revenge but of peace, for she had learned the greatest twist of all the real wealth was never the billions, never the headlines, but the journey from being mocked in silence to standing tall in triumph. And in that realization, the story of Amara became legend, a tale whispered in ballrooms, classrooms, and boardrooms. The story of the night a billionaire family mocked a black woman at a party and lost everything because they never understood who she truly was.